Hello, inner Sanctum SuperCoach lovers. Welcome to our look back at round 10, and we're already looking into round 11. We've got the four of us here this week to have a chat about what's coming up and what has been. Dan, I'll start with you. How are you, mate? How did your team go this week?
Yeah, not too bad. 3 out of 4, 23.99. It was all right. It was okay.
Nice one. And but Carlton lost, so that's no good. Mike, how about you, mate? How'd you go?
I managed to improve by about 450 on the previous week's score, but just shy of 2,400 didn't get me a league win. So back to the drawing board again, and everyone knows that I'm a West Coast supporter, so it's well and truly longing for cricket season at the moment.
That's right. Well, my beloved Cats lost too, and I managed to score just under 2,400 as well. It's nice to beat you, Mike, in a league by 1 point, so that's always good. Mick, how you doing, mate? How'd your team go? I know the Bombers had a win.
Bombers had a win, great win, and I had a 24.86 this week, so a pretty decent score. Still only good for 3 league wins. Some bloke tuned out of 25.80 against me in one of my other leagues, so that was pretty brutal. But yeah, 24.86, can't complain. I think it's my best score for the year, so pretty good.
Nice one. Yeah, certainly the scores were up this week. Yeah, I know the winning bloke for the round had 2,900 plus, so some massive scores out there when all the ones we all have do really well. We'll start as always with Gary's and Nathan's our stars and our duds from our team from round 10. Dan, I'll throw to you first. Share us with us. I know the background's going to change now. We're looking forward to who you've got for us this week.
Well, I'm going to have to go with my Gary as Rory Laird. I think he was under like an injury cloud at the end of the last game. Like he might not play. He scored 98 last week, and he worked out this week with 145. So he's fine. I don't know what's going on with those reports. He's fine. And then look, my Nathan is a bit of a clip on a coach that's. Look, I'll just pile on the pressure. He's not having a good time at the moment. They were the 17th team in the league, and now they're the 18th team in the league after they got beaten by the 18th team in the league, but to the tune of about 116 points. So Adam Simpson, maybe think about who your players are playing on, or what your players are going to do rather than who your players are playing on, especially when it comes to Will Day. All right, hands off. I need him to score points. He only got 74 as a result of getting tagged. It didn't do any good. Like, have a long hard look at yourself. All right, Simmo?
There's a fair chance he's having a hard look at himself after the way he's going. Mike, I might throw to you, being the West Coast fan. You got your Garys and Nathans for this week.
Yeah, look, I'll a quick mention of my Gary because I want to spend some time on my Nathan as well. But Gary, I'm going to put it to Josh Dunkley. Absolute bull, 153, just ever reliable. He's actually a real joy to watch. He's hard at the ball, good above his head, and he just accumulates tackles, all contested possessions. But mine, similar vein to Dan's, but I've got to give a clip to Vossy. I mean, seriously, like you've got Alex Ginjotta, all right, who's scoring some nice, valuable points. Everyone's brought him in. He's got the highest ownership. He's about to go up in value, and he bloody drops him. And then he spends a whole quarter quabbling with bloody Cripps on the sidelines. Get him on the ground. The Crippers scoring shitouts. Get your good players scoring well. Come on, Vossy.
Oh, that's 2 coaches clipped in 2 goes. Mick, you're Gary and Nathan's from the round.
Maybe Dimmer?
Dimmer, yeah. Well, Dimmer deserves a clip, doesn't he? Looks like he's clipped himself. After I traded this bloke in this week, Zach Butters gave me a 184, so he's 100% my Gary. I think he had 41 touches.
Oh, no, that's clearly Mick's Nathan is himself because he's frozen. Oh, he might be back. Oh, the beauty of live recording.
Sorry, boys.
All right, that's right. We just bagged you while you were gone. Tell us more about Zach Butters.
Excellent. Probably deserves it. Zach Butters, 41 touches, 184 SuperCoach points. So well and truly my Gary for the week. And my let's say my Nathan would be probably since I traded him in, he's been scoring pretty poorly, which is Will Day. He's only I think should have given us 74 on the weekend. He started off so well. He was averaging over 100. I brought him in as as my D5, and now struggling. I've put the curse on him. So yeah, that's he's my Nathan for the week. Poor old Will.
Nice one. Well, we did last week. We did talk about a couple of points of difference. Glad that you listened to our discussion and you brought in Zach Butters. I brought one in too. This man, Tom Liberatore, his ownership was too low and his point scoring was too high for me to not bring him in, and he was all good. Churned out another 126, so that was great. He's my Gary, my Nathan. Look, this is the first time all my primos have all done really well, and so it's just my Nathan's just my rookies in general. 35, 21, 41, 59, 54, 53. I just need some rookies to get 80s or 90s would be great. My God, just got all the no good ones. So they're just all my Nathans in general. Hopefully some of them can do something soon. Like we do every week, we'll have a quick look at the rookies on offer. Last week, I know that one of us mentioned Bailey Humphrey. I just want to know if anyone actually of the four of us took him. Anyone take the punt? I know he managed to score a nice 100 plus on the weekend. None of us.
No, couldn't do it.
He played 6 games, and even though that's back-to-back hundreds, I believe, so it's probably too late for him. Dan, any rookies we can look at for this week?
Well, yeah, look, we've got a few on our list to go through and talk about. There's a couple of one-gamers that I'm sure we'll get to. But there's another sort of multiple gamer that's already gone up. He's already had his bubble. I'm not sold on this guy, but I just want to put the word out that just have a look at what was going on. So Josh Weddle, defender, so he's averaging 67.8, which is propped up by 114 points this round. So he's 230.2 thousand with the 4 games played. But just steer a bit of caution on it, all right? Because he kicked 2 goals, which definitely helps pump up his score across the halfback. But he's playing against Witches Hats, so really just take that with a grain of salt, all right? So he's just one that I reckon I'd stay away from.
Yeah, I reckon there's a fair chance I'd score 100 SuperCoach points against West Coast. Mike, I know you and I ventured to North Melbourne, Sydney, and we managed to watch one rookie who was very impressive in particular. I might throw you to talk about him.
Yeah, definitely. He was going to be my one. And I tell you, I've never seen a guy make a debut and be so loved by his fans. And that is, I'm going to call him Oddlaw because my kids are Where's Wally fans. But George Wardlaw, he came in and he was very, very, very impressive. Absolutely hard at it. I think he's got a bit of white line fever, young Georgie. But he was super impressive. If he can learn how to kick it more than 25 metres, I reckon he's a shoo-in for SuperCoach this year. 193, pick number 4, wasn't he? Draft pick number 4 for the Roos. So, if you've got those 350s, then you can potentially make 150, 200 grand with a down trade. Yeah, really like Georgie. I think I might, I've got a couple I could downgrade to him. Maybe Warple is the move to him. I think Warple's done his dash for me. Probably held on a bit too long. Yeah,
I think it wouldn't surprise me. I haven't looked yet, but it wouldn't surprise me if he's the most brought-in player. I can't see North not playing him for a while now, unless he got injured. Mick, what about you? Any other rookies we could look at to bring in this week?
Yeah, unfortunately, Josh Weddle, I think we sort of missed the boat on. I remember we mentioned him a couple of weeks ago. He was on the bubble there. He played his 2 games. He was averaging maybe 50. And then on the weekend he's had 114, which is just a huge score. So
the funny thing
he's
is,
jumped up 100k.
Funny thing is, Mick, that Dan said that 2 minutes ago.
Yeah, he said he was due for his 1 or 2.
We did say you would cut his lunch at some point, so very good. So Josh Weddle,
today. Well, Josh Weddle.
I fear it's a new segment. It's a new segment coming on.
Okay, no, I'm kidding. An interesting one from a Bombers is Kane Baldwin though. I'm not sure about his job security because he's 173k. He's averaged 68. He's played his 2 games on the bubble now. he's come in. He's only come in last week for the first time for the year, and he's played really well actually. But Brad Scott actually, he's listed as a forward, but Scotty actually played him off sort of half back on Saturday night, and he played quite well. So another interesting one there if you're looking for a downgrade forward option. I'm not 100% convinced on his job security though. Baldy,
Don't forget though, Mick. Don't forget though, he's playing the Witches' Hats this weekend though. So if you want to get some added value, perhaps you bring him in for this week.
You could score 120. You never know.
The West Coast Witches Hats has a nice ring to it, but it's a new logo.
I tell you, when's that Test Championship on and the Ashes starts? Seriously.
No, we've got SuperCoach to follow. That's all good. So a few rookies there for us. Just thought we'd quickly also touch on a couple of the points of difference, the pods from last week. I know Mickey mentioned Zachy Butters, which you brought in. I brought in Libba. Dan, any of the others from last week we mentioned that caught your eye again that we should still consider?
Yeah, the one that caught my eye was Charlie Ballard, who
I knew you were going to say
although
him.
he didn't set the world on fire. He did set the world on fire, but look, ownership at just 0.6%, scored 95. He's still a lower price option that you might want to look at in defence, going along pretty nicely. And yeah, I think he'd be the one. We had a few other players that we chirped up last week that really didn't pull through for us. So in terms of defenders, that was Jake Lloyd. I know that I think Mike was talking about him being Mr. Consistent. Scored 72. And the other one was Adam Sard, who we were all talking about. Why is his ownership so low when he's been averaging so well? And he pulled out a lovely 60 points. So yeah, just a few interesting ones there.
What about you, Mike? Any others from last week that still catching your eye? Maybe give us something a bit different for our sides.
Yeah, look, nothing's really standing out for me. There's one that you've highlighted, so I'm going to come in and cut your lunch. And it sort of goes into the next section is what do you do if you've got Clayton Oliver in your side? But we'll let you introduce the next section, and because I think there's one or two points of difference there that could come into your side to replace him.
Beautiful. Well, good segue, mate. I thought we'd talk about what to do with Clayton Oliver because a lot of people own him, and I just was reading before that he's going to be out. It's not going to be short term. They're looking weeks, so I think you're probably going to have to trade. This actually is for a fan question. Asked me what we should do with Oliver. Dale, shout out to you. He wanted to know what to do with Oliver, so always happy to answer the fans' questions. I don't think fans can actually get us questions yet, but if they run into us on the street, sure. So what to do with Clayton Oliver? Dan, I will throw to you then, mate. I know you just actually, Mike, sorry, you can go.
Yeah.
You brought it.
Yeah, well, I did, and one of those people worth considering is probably Zach Merritt. He's pretty consistent SuperCoach performer, only 8.8% ownership and scored through the roof at 160 plus last week. So you can make yourself a bit of coin and get a really consistent performer. So I might look at him. However, I recall Carlton and bloody Vossy. I recall saying that Cripps was a bad, potentially multi-week hamstring last year. Traded him out, and he played the following week. So maybe I might hold on to Oliver for a week and see if he makes a miraculous recovery, given he played out the game with said hamstring injury.
Whole quarter.
The whole quarter.
Yeah. He actually had more SuperCoach points than half his teammates, I think, in that quarter he was injured too. So, Mick, have you got Oliver? And if so, what are you thinking? Who can we bring in?
I don't have him, actually, and I was thinking of a way to bring him in this week. So this actually timing's probably pretty good for me to maybe focus on bringing him in after the Melbourne bye, which happens to be round 14. So round 15 will put it 5 weeks from now, which should be about what they're saying, in terms of his recovery time. So so I don't have you. Personally, it really just depends. I mean, if you're going for the chocolates for the 50K, you're probably, you're going to want to probably hold him and see if you can get through. But if you need league wins, then I think you need to trade and just make sure you've got the primo on field. So I'm glad it's a decision I don't have to make this week, to be honest. Yeah.
Dan, any other thoughts? What should we do with Clayton? Who are our options?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. So you trade him out. He's worth 660 odd thousand. He's got 120 points this week, so it's not like he's going to go down much when he plays his next game or anything. So it's a really tricky one. I think for me, I'm probably looking at using the cash to bring in someone that I don't have just yet, which I think almost everyone has, which is Jordan Dawson, who over the next couple of weeks is predicted to drop a fair amount. I think he's already dropped 30,000, and his break even's 173 for this week. So I might do something sneaky and just do like an Oliver to Wardlaw, and then use that extra cash the following week once Dawson's bottom out a bit more to bring him in. Tricky though with the bye rounds, with Adelaide having them in round 14, I think it is. So just got to have a look at that. But just be wary that if you do get rid of Oliver, you might not be able to bring him back in so easily at that price.
Yeah, that's true. And I guess if it was round 6, you'd probably go, yep, 100% out the door. I reckon if you're playing best 18 as it is for 4 rounds after this one, you could potentially, and he's obviously not going to play one of them, his team anyway, you could potentially, if you've already pissed away a lot of trades, potentially just hold him. So I don't have him, so luckily, but if I had him, I would, and was going okay as well. It depends if you're chasing those league wins, then I would consider holding him. You're right. Who knows? Considering he played out the game, who knows? The thing is, though, you can, because he's the second most expensive bloke, pretty much. I think you can bring in nearly anyone. So just take your pick who your gut feel is as to if you want to replace him. But yeah, round 14 bye. If you bring someone in, just make sure you try and time where they're going to play, so you actually get a bit of value out of the person playing. So if you had Oliver to begin with, you probably want him back at some point. So interesting one. Good luck to those out there who have him. Dale, hope that answered your question. Either bring him out, take him out, or don't.
Words of wisdom.
Very insightful.
Very insightful. All good. Let's have a quick talk again. This is the last round before the dual position players change, and we talked about a few last week. There's only really 3 that stand out, so I might get each of you to share one. Mike, I'll start with you. Thoughts on Jack McRae?
Yeah, I'm well, maybe he's my Oliver trade, because he, if you remember, you've had him all year and he's been scoring pretty poorly, but the last few rounds, I think he was a point of difference in our contest on the weekend, and he scored really well, potentially up to the maybe after that Bevo bake. Scotty started to listen to and started to play a bit more midfield time, but I do note his head still 40% up forward. So he's one I'll definitely look at, because I've got holes to fill in both those lines. So he might be one for me. And geez, the Bulldogs are flying, and they're, the Bulldogs of 2016-17, where they use the ball a lot, high disposal, high contested possessions. And if he's playing all over the park, I think that's a really good option.
Yeah, he was 35% forward last week. He's gone up to 40, so he must have played a fair bit of time up forward on the weekend. Still scored 145. So I think a lot of people are going to jump on him being a forward after next week. He's all but certain, I reckon, from this point forward. So I plan to just shift him straight into the forward line when I can. Dan, what about you? What about Maxi Gawn, who's touch and go as to whether he'll be DPP?
Yeah, he's an interesting one. We were talking about the luxury of being able to potentially swap in between ruck and forward, especially if you had, like during the bye rounds, especially if you had a ruck forward as your non-playing ruck position. He didn't score that well on the weekend. I know it was really wet over there in Adelaide, so it's never great for the uncoordinated ruckman. And it's just an interesting one, because I would have thought that against Port Adelaide, he would have probably had a little bit more ball and dominated a little bit more with hit outs. So for him only to score 84, it's an interesting one. And we did say, just very, very touch and go at that 35%. So I'm not sure who the D's have this week. Just need to have a little quick look at that. They've got Freo, so he's up against Sean Darcy and Luke Jackson. He might have to play more midfield minutes to get that over the line. So if you're tossing up bringing him in, I think you got to wait that one more week just to see what's going on.
Yeah, I think if I can add on there, yes, it's potential DPP, but you're not getting anything out of the Gawn Grundy duo. They're splitting the ruck, Jules. You're not going to be getting the large scores from either of them, and I haven't looked at every single one since they have been playing together, but I don't think any of them have scored north of 110 individually, and a lot of 70s and 80s. So don't be bringing them in if you're hoping for the Gawn of the last 5-6 years, because we're not getting it because he's not in the ruck as much.
Yeah, he did spend a lot more of the game than Grundy in the ruck last game, which is why his forward dropped to that 35%. A lot of people actually brought him in assuming he would end up dual position, so he's going to be all touch and go. Mick, what about Sammy Walsh? He's the third main one.
Yeah, he's dropped. He did have at one point 40% mid forward time, which has dropped to 34. So now it's going to be, again, like Maxi, it's going to be very much touch and go. Watching the Pies Blues game yesterday, he was attending a lot of centre bounces and getting a lot of midfield time. So I can't see that number going back up, to be honest. If Vossy's going to use him in that same mode this week against Carlton, who've got Sydney on the Friday night. So if he's going to use Walsh the same way that he did yesterday, and I didn't watch the whole game, but I watched probably at least 2 or 3 quarters, and I just saw him doing nothing but midfield time. Is that pretty much accurate, Dan? From what as a Carlton man, he was getting a lot of centre bounces.
Yeah, it was, and it's a weird one though, because we were asking the question last week: why is he not playing midfield when he's hands down our top 2 best midfielders? Didn't really make much sense. But I brought him in thinking that, yes, if he gets dual position status, fantastic. He's the number 1 ranked forward. And if he doesn't, he's still a solid scorer. And he only scored 92. So, I think he's one to have a look at. But if he doesn't get that forward time in, I wouldn't be, stuffing around with trades just to bring him in. And he hasn't really been he's been consistent, but he hasn't really been pulling out those massive scores like some of those other mids.
Yeah, we know he's got a pretty high ceiling around sort of the 140, 150 mark, but he hasn't done that yet this year. I mean, I know he's only played 5, maybe 6 games so far, and he obviously coming up against a really quality Collingwood midfield, maybe dropped his numbers down a little bit. But yeah, I can't see him becoming a dual position, but he's still a pod. He's still around the sort of 6% mark of ownership. So looking at it from that perspective as a potential mid, I think he's pretty safe. It's a pretty safe trading option.
Yeah, 2 weeks ago when this first sort of came up, I was keen for him to get there so I could shift him forward and bring in some other mids and not have to waste a trade bringing him in. But I kind of hope he doesn't now, so that people just lay off him, and I hope his form slowly builds and scores me some good scores, and I have him as a bit of a point of difference. So I guess we will just see, and we can certainly talk about him next week once we find out for sure what happens. We are 2 weeks from the buys. Throughout those bye weeks, we will have a chat each week about what our strategy is each week. I know a couple of weeks ago we talked about our general strategy 4 weeks out. Just a quick chat for a minute or two from each of you about thoughts a couple of weeks out. Maybe how many players you got looking to play round 12? Or Dan, I'll start with you. Any thoughts about the buys a couple of weeks out from round 12, where we'll be missing Brisbane, Freo, Saints, and the Swans?
So I was looking at this probably pretty late, to be honest. Last week when Callum Mills went down with his calf, I saw it as an opportunity to get rid of one of those player from one of those teams. So getting rid of the Sydney player and bringing in Walsh. So that meant that in terms of premiums I have playing during that week, at the moment I've got 12 premiums playing and 6 rookies. So there's my 18. So that's enough, I don't need to do anything much more there. We were talking about who we'd then sort of bring in or what we do. And so I think that's when you look at it and you go, well, there's a couple of players that I would based on the way that they sort of went this weekend, like over the past couple of weeks, I really would like to bring in. And some of those are for playing for those teams. So especially Jack Sinclair, who absolutely churned it out. He'd be one that I'd be looking at getting in sort of round 13 post their round 12 bye.
Nice one. Mike, what about you? Any thoughts by, in particular, round 12 at this early stage, a couple of weeks out?
Look, probably haven't given it as much thought yet, other than the fact that I'm going to have enough players to get me through. I think I've got 19 at this stage, not including Clary. So I should have 20 players at least. So I may just think about watching my trades this week, noting that I'll be able to field a side in that round 12, 13, obviously with only 2 sides having the bye. I'm starting to more think about rounds 14 and 15, which I'm sure we'll cover in a bit more length next week.
Yeah, Mick, anything else to add to those thoughts at the moment?
My team's probably going to be strongest in round 12. Actually, I've got 14 primos that'll be available that week and 10 rookies. So I've got a pretty big choice. But then when it comes to round 15, that's when I'm going to get absolutely gutted, where I've only got 17 available players, including rookies, guns. So I'm going to have to make a few trades here and there just to get a team on the field. I know I spoke about it early this season that my buy strategy is going to be just to write that one off, but I still want to remain semi-competitive and try and trade my way into full primo by the end of the buy period. But so it's not looking too good for round 15, but round 12, 13, 14, I should be pretty safe at this stage.
Yeah, well, I think most people, like round 13, how many people are going to have more than a couple of Geelong/Gold Coast people, really? I've got Charlie Constable just as my cannon fodder on the bench. A few people might have Anderson and Tom Stewart and a couple others, but there's not going to be too many. Round 12, I've got just enough. I'll have 18 or 19 playing, which is all right. I'm keen on Errol Goulden to sort of come into the forward line post his bye. Him and Sinclair into defence, like you said, Dan. He's looking the goods too. My man Brayshaw is going to miss round 12 though, so my team's destined to lose without my superstar in the middle, which is a bit unfortunate. So, I think a lot of people be in the same boat. Just see how round 12 looks. Round 13 should be a cruise, and then hope for the best come 14 and 15. But we'll certainly have a chat about them briefly each week over the next few weeks. That's for sure. We'll finish on a couple of things to finish. Dan, it'd be remiss of us not to throw to you for your Rage Trade Corner for round 10.
This one's an iffy one because I still haven't decided. All right, but I'm going to go with the man who
looks a lot like that.
He's a fantasy. He looks like That matches that a fair bit. He's the fantasy pig, and he did a hamstring, so I don't know. It's kind of works well. That he might be gone for a couple of weeks. In Clayton Oliver. Look, it's not a wholehearted serve this week because he is an absolute gun, and to pull out 120 on one leg is pretty impressive in that last quarter. I think he was on about 114 at 3/4 time or something. So was it that great? I don't know. So yeah, anyway, he's the one that is probably on the chopping block this week. More so, just I don't think that my team's good enough to have 660,000 sitting on the bench, even if it is only for a couple of weeks. So I think I might just turf him.
Yes, good, turf him. Beautiful. All right. Any final words, Mike? I'll start with you. Words looking ahead to round 11. Any captain's choices? Anything different you want to tuck our way?
Yeah, captain one's interesting because Clary he's been my VC or C option most of the year. The Bulldogs' strong performers in English and the Bont aren't until Saturday night. I'm just sort of looking at Brisbane. They're quite late with Neil. They're very, very late. So maybe I might Bont, and I've got a couple of options to loop into Neil and or Dacos on Sunday afternoon. Is probably what I'm thinking at this early stage. I'm blazing through trades like there is absolutely no tomorrow, and I'm going to continue to do that. That is now my strategy. It is a sinking ship, and I'm trying to get the water out of the. I've got my ice cream containers getting the water out of the boat because I am sinking at a rapid rate.
Nice one, Mick. What about you, mate? Looking ahead to round 11.
One player we didn't mention before, actually, in the potential rookies to bring in, he's only played his one game. Eddie Ford from North had 102. So I'm not going to break my rule. My rule is never to bring in players that have only played the one game. I'm not going to bring him in, but very interesting to see how he scores this week because he's 123k forward. Already scored 102, and if he can score even a 70, that'll give him an average of 85 and a break even of somewhere up in the negative 65, negative 70 range, and guaranteed to generate cash if he gets picked the week after. So keep an eye on his score this week. And captaincy options, it's going to be tough. I think Petrarca as vice, playing the early Saturday game into the Bont on the Saturday night, possibly. It seems to be the same Petrarca into Bont. I think I've gone that the last 3 weeks, and it's working reasonably well. So Bont only 112 on the weekend, but that's still it's a serviceable score as captain. So I'm not going to be changing anything too quick.
Nice one, Dan. Your turn. Or are you looking at for round 11?
Yeah, look, I think similar to Mike in having Clary as my vice captain. I think he's been my vice captain for the past few weeks. I'm gonna have to look for someone new. I think I don't mind the idea of Rowan Marshall. I think he's turned it around. Last couple of weeks have been big up against a younger ruck in Lloyd Meek or who else they got? Reeves, I think, has been doing a bit of rucking for Hawthorn. So I think he gets the job done against those two in that game, which is the early game on Saturday. So I might put him vice captain, and then captain. Look, I think I might sit it on either Bont or roll the dice on Dunkley in that late game. He's just been phenomenal, averaging 116.8 per game. An absolute beast.
Yeah, well, given the Crows of the last game, the Dawson or Laird, it always seems like one or the other is the one that scores big. So it's always a toss of a coin if that's where you got to go. I just noted how much the Freo mids dominated against Geelong when half our midfield's out and Brayshaw's 135, etc. So if you've got the likes of Tom Green, which I have, I brought him in last week as well. He might be one just to something different. For the 10 or so percent, I don't even know actually how I own Jeremy Cameron. I reckon against his old side down in Geelong, he's going to kick 9 this week. You heard it here first. So he's had a couple of quiet weeks. Either that or he'll be out injured, one of the two. So there's something a bit different. And then if Green fails, I just toss a coin on the Sunday. Who wants to have a go? I picked Dacos last week and he got 100. I think I just jinxed whoever's my captain. But we'll see how we go. That wraps up the show. Looking ahead to round 11. Thanks for joining us as always, and we look forward to all of you, all 100 plus people joining us next week. Take it easy.